All right, so today we're gonna go through this tier list and rank the WWF, WWE belts. There's two, if I'm not mistaken, two ECW belts. One, two, yep, two ECW belts. And what I think is S tier, great, good, underwhelming, question mark, and this belt ain't gonna cut it. All right, so I want to start from the beginning. I know for a fact that this belt is the original belt. I want to say it like it came out in like the 60s. Now, mind you, I haven't watched wrestling. I watched wrestling this past Monday. Today's the 31st, the 31st. So the 29th of May, I watched Monday Night Raw for the first time in probably 10 years. Probably 10, 12 years. The first time I've watched it all the way through, it was great. I really liked the storyline. I really liked the show that was put on. So I did go through a span where I didn't watch it. So some of these belts maybe I may not have like the biggest opinion or input on, but so I would say the original belt, it's great because it's the original belt. It's cut out in the size of the US, and if I'm not mistaken, these plates on the side had like the first two ever champions' names on it. If I'm not mistaken. Now, I want to go to some belts, and maybe I might get a little flack for this. The NXT belts are just not that great. And to me, SmackDown and Raw are it. Like, those are the big two programs, the big shows. If I'm going to be honest, I got to put all the NXT belts in this belt ain't going to cut it. Because to me, NXT, when it first started up, was where we're finding talent. Like, we're training guys, and that's where people come out of. I know they have their own belt system, and I think it's right now it's considered like the third market, so to say, Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. So I gotta get caught up, I guess. My favorite belt of all time, and because it was heavily in the Raw is War Attitude Era, would have to be the Broken Skull Championship belt. Stone Cold was arguably the biggest star that wrestling has ever seen. He really carried wrestling out of the 90s into the 2000s. And I don't know, other than The Rock, who would have carried it for those years. I mean, we have big stars like Triple H and stuff like that, but those guys really took it out of the 90s into the 2000s and really turned wrestling into what it was. Now, while we're on the topic of The Rock, so little known fact, most people will see the Brahma Bull belt right here and go, I've never seen that. So funny story, when Stone Cold had his belt and then The Rock became champion, The Rock was going to have his own belt. The Brahma Bull belt was supposed to be displayed on, I think like a Monday Night Raw or SmackDown or something. Little known fact is it got lost in the mail. It couldn't get there in time. So they had to use a different belt. I don't remember what belt it was that they ended up using, but they had to use a different belt, and they didn't want to go back to the Brahma Bull belt. So it never saw the light of day. I seen Stephanie McMahon, I think it was like on A&E, telling the story, and I remember seeing pictures of this over the years, and I thought, I've never seen that belt. What, like, is this like a fan-made thing? But I think this is a pretty good belt. It's a replica, kind of the Stone Cold thing, and it never came out. Had it come out, I think it would have had a bigger thing. The Rock would have carried around. He did his arm flip. I really think it would have had more weight and probably went up into like S or great at least. This one was the original, like Big Eagle, great belt, and then the remodification of it was this belt. These to me, they kind of go hand in hand. So if I'm not mistaken, you can fact check me. This belt here had the tip of one of the wings broke off, or the feathers broke off. I think Yokozuna had it, Stone Cold had it. A bunch of guys had this belt, and that's how you can tell the originality of it. The one that's, I think it's on display, is the tip is broke. Or Stone Cold might have it. I can't remember which one of these. I think Stone Cold has this one in his like house. The next belt I want to throw on here, I would say, is the Daniel Bryan. I think it's extremely underwhelming. They tried doing a personalization. So and I know this isn't right. It's on here. Or did I not? Am I missing it? Okay. This is a great belt. This is not the Cena belt. This is a variation of the belt. I think this is where they fixed so it didn't spin anymore, and this got passed around by a handful of people. The Daniel Bryan and then the Rated R is a knockoff of that. The Rated R one, all this is a fixed cover over this. That's all it was. So while I think the Rated R one was pretty good, the Daniel Bryan one was, I think it was just trash. I mean, say what you want, I think it was just absolute trash. It's an ugly belt. I just don't like it. This ECW belt, and then I would put this ECW belt right here. So ECW, if you weren't familiar with it, if you're watching this, you probably know what ECW is, or at least when ECW fell under WWE, then you definitely know what ECW is. But ECW back in the day was the hardcore. Everything was basically hardcore. You had some of the best wrestlers, if you ask me, come out of ECW. Big names, the Tommy Dreamers, the Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, same guy. Terry Funk, the Dudley Boys. There's a lot of big names that came out of ECW. And ECW was always like, I loved hardcore matches. I love the excitement, the thrill. And I think when ECW came into WWE, it kind of got watered down. You know, they started doing hardcore matches and like ECW throwbacks. They had these guys fighting, but it just was never the same. Rob Van Dam came from there too. What's the dude I'm thinking of? He wore like the like almost like MC Hammer looking pants. And the little headdress. I think he's supposed to be like a Middle Eastern dude. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. It's gonna drive me nuts. I'll put it over here. And then the dude that came out with the kendo stick and used to smash himself on the head and drink beers and stuff like that. I think he was supposed to be like the ECW Stone Cold. But that dude, I think, was legit drunk when he would come out to wrestle. All right, moving on. I think the current one needs to have. It's a great looking belt. Let's just go ahead and say that. But I think the current one needs to build up some memories. But it's a great looking belt. I personally I like it a lot. I like the way it looks. If you look at some of these belts, like the Daniel Bryan, the Rated R, and then this one, there's not much variation between it. You can say there is, but there's really not. They just changed some plates and stuff like that. This one is like a really good fresh start. I like it a lot. This one, I'm not sure what belt this is, if I'm being honest. I don't know. I tried looking up some history to see what this one was, but I feel like this one is kind of mixed. It blends in with Hogan's championship belt, and I think this is an okay belt. I'm gonna put it underwhelming. I think for the history of it, Hogan's the only one that ever wore this belt. If I'm not mistaken, Hogan's the only one that wore this belt, and then we bump to other variations. Now, I will say, if I had to pick out of the old belts, which one would I want next? Possibly Big Green is up there for me for S tier. Big Green, this is like one of so these plaques on the side, these plaques were the names of the 4 previous people who held the belt. So this was the original belt, And then I want to say it went to this belt right here. And then this one, then this one, then this one. I think this one came in. No, this is the NWA. Yeah, this is the NWA. I'm not sure. I have to do some research. So, but I know Ric Flair was well known in the NWA. He won the belt. I can't remember who he won the belt against, and that was when Ric Flair basically left the NWA and became the Ric Flair we all know and love. He became really big, and it's a wrap after that. WCW, WWF, WWE. So I'm gonna put these two in the middle. I know this is an NWA. If you zoom in really close right here, it has NWA. After that, I thought personally, because I just remember the look when you're sitting up and the camera angle is looking up on a Triple H or a Rock or you name it. And this belt, to me, just looks so good on some people. I the only person I really associate this belt with is Triple H. That's, I mean, you might say, oh, what about this person? What? Triple H to me, in the corner, or when he was on the side of the ring spitting the water and he would have the belt up with one hand. I mean, he had it around his waist too, but that belt right there, when I think of it, I think of Triple H. Now, let's go to these two belts. I think these personally are a little underwhelming. It is like a spin-off from the Cena belt and the Rated R belt and the Daniel Bryan belt, and they definitely kept the Daniel Bryan like outline, right? But these are very underwhelming belts. There's nothing all that special about these belts. It's kind of like a, hey bro, if you copy my homework, don't copy it all the way, okay? Or don't make it exact. But these are a little underwhelming. Now we're getting into like the throwback belts. So this belt to me is a good belt. This was a bridging of the gap for, I want to say this came early 2000s, late 90s. I could be off on that, but I want to say early 2000s, late 90s. This belt right here is an okay belt. It kind of looks like Hogan's belt. However, this belt right here, it's a pretty good belt. I'm gonna leave it there, but I want to say this belt was worn by Andre the Giant. So this belt, was big. It was a big belt. And then from this, I would say that the rest of these, I'm gonna drop in good, only because they're good looking belts. However, they're extremely old. There's no, like, the first belt, you got to put in grade at least. But these belts here, they're okay. I feel like this one, we transitioned. I know this is the number 2. This is the number 2 belt. Now we're kind of transitioning into the model we know, the big center plate and the side plates. But then it kind of got a little underwhelming. Now I do like these. These belts kind of remind me of like the current belt. If you put them side by side, we just made it like a little bit bigger. These are good belts. I'm not gonna lie, these are good belts. So I'm not gonna take anything away from them. There are some like, I would say honorable mentions. I was a big fan of the Ultimate Warrior's belt. I'll put the Ultimate Warrior's belt. I'll put some of them over here, but he would take the plating off and change the background depending on what uniform color he was wearing. I think that's a little cool, the variation in it. That way, that flair, that little extra added touch is pretty cool. This is where I think these belts belong. If you think otherwise, let me know in the comments section. Let me know which belt is your favorite, or if I left one out, let me know. I'll catch you guys next time.